If there's one thing I know, it's never mess with Mother Nature, mother-in-laws, or mother-freaking Ukrainians. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 101 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about community activism. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you for joining me today, and it does feel really good to be back and doing the show. Last week, of course, was episode number 100, and it went fairly well, I think. I like the way that it turned out. I have a lot more stuff to talk about on The Lord of the Rings, though, so I'm thinking maybe down the line I'm going to do another episode covering a lot of the stuff I didn't get to, but I have some movie reviews that I need to get to in the meantime, and some other topics I want to talk about. So today, we're getting around to Zack Snyder's Justice League. It came out, I think it was March 18th. I watched it on March 19th because I just didn't have time on the day. I'm pretty sure I watched it on the 19th, but anyway, I saw it, and I've had about a month to sit and think about this movie, so we're going to talk about it today. I am going to do spoilers throughout. It is basically the same essential plot as the one from 2017 with some extra stuff thrown in. I am going to talk about what has been added and what has been kind of taken away, and stuff with Joss Whedon and stuff with Zack Snyder, some behind-the-scenes stuff about the creation of this movie, and that's actually where I'm going to start, and why don't I get into it right now. And I want to say, first off, right off the bat, I do not think this movie should exist. It sets a really bad precedent for the film industry in the sense that if a fan base is unhappy with something, they can bully and harass and just have this online campaign and whine and cry and complain until they get what they want. And the studio will bow and buckle to their wishes and give them what they want. And that's just, I don't think movies should be made that way. It just doesn't feel right to me, you know? And there were problems with the Justice League set, of course there were, and things going on behind the scenes, and then Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide and he left the production, but then I think there were also other issues before he left. So he was gone, and then they brought in Joss Whedon, and then there were all kinds of problems, and they reshot a ton of stuff, and they edited this movie down to nothing, and then the Justice League that we got in 2017 was really quite bad. And I did another review episode a little over a month ago before Zack Snyder's Justice League came out, so if you want to hear my thoughts on the 2017 version, you can go back and go check that out. But now we've got this new Zack Snyder's Justice League version, which I guess doesn't take place in any kind of official canon. It's just something that Warner Brothers has released for the fans to be able to see, and now we've seen it, and then we move on with our lives. Nothing changes, nothing is impacted in the Warner Brothers DCEU. It's going to continue on just as they were doing. Actually, they did cancel a couple of movies after the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League. There was going to be an Aquaman spin-off called The Trench that is now no longer going to be made, and then there was going to be a movie called New Gods that was being directed by Ava DuVernay, which featured the character of Darkseid, and they decided to cancel that as well because Warner Brothers just doesn't know how to commit to anything over there. How many times have they said a Flash movie is coming out and then canceled it, or they said a Cyborg movie was coming out and then they canceled it? There was supposed to be another Green Lantern movie and it's been canceled. There's been so many things going on with Batman, and then they made the Joker, and then there's the Batman coming out. There are just so many things that they set up and then cancel and then take away. It just seems that they don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to commit to anything. So I'm actually really surprised that this movie even got approved, and it was largely due to the fact of pushes from fans and people being mean on the internet, but it wasn't Warner Brothers' decision itself to make it. So Warner Brothers is a smaller company that's owned by Time Warner Media, and then Time Warner Media is owned by AT&T, which is a company in the States that does cell phones and internet and other stuff. I don't know. I live in Canada, so I'm not 100% sure what exactly their focus is, but I'm for sure know that they make cell phones, and they do like cell phone towers and stuff like that. So they're a big company, and they own Warner Brothers, and it was actually the people in charge at AT&T who stepped in and said, do Zack Snyder's Justice League, like, release it, here's $70 million to polish up the visual effects and get everything edited down, and that's it. That's kind of how this ball got rolling. They brought Zack Snyder back, and they got into the editing room, and they just started remaking Zack Snyder's Justice League. And then they also made a black and white version, which I think is called Zack Snyder's Justice League Justice is Gray or something like that. I didn't watch it. I only watched the color version. Once was enough. And I think by me saying once is enough, it kind of gives away my opinions on this movie. I think it was fine. It's a significant improvement over the 2017 Justice League, but it still has problems. It still has things I don't like about it, and I'm going to talk about them. We're going to get into some more details here. So the first things first, let's talk about the stuff that was added. And I've got two columns here, good stuff that was added and bad stuff that was added. So let's talk about the good stuff first. First off, we get a lot more Cyborg in this movie. We get a lot of his backstory. We get stuff with him and his dad. We get a lot more to do with him and how he's feeling and how he's thinking. And it was hugely beneficial to have this information in the movie, especially because in the 2017 version, we got none of that. It was completely all cut from the film, and we don't know who this guy is. We don't know what his motivations are. We don't know what he cares about. And so why do I care about this robot man machine thing? Because I have nothing to go off of. But in this new version, we get a lot of backstory on him, and he's set up really, really well. And the only real complaint I have is I'm not 100% on board with the performance that Ray Fisher gives. It's fine. It's good. I think he's supposed to be monotone and kind of blank slate because he's now part machine, but it makes it really hard to connect with a character who delivers all of his lines completely straight-faced. You know what I'm saying? It makes sense to me. I wasn't 100% on board with his performance, but all of his extra stuff was really good, and I feel improved the story significantly. Another really good thing we got was context. This movie has a lot of additional context that we don't have in the theatrical version that really, really, really helped understand exactly what was happening and what a mother box is and who Steppenwolf is. And they expanded on the villains in this movie, so we don't just have Steppenwolf, we have Darkseid, and we have Desaad, and there's also Granny Goodness is kind of in this movie. You see her in like 2 or 3 shots, but she's there. So the villain archive has kind of expanded in this movie, and we get more villains. It is still mostly Steppenwolf, and they're fighting him for the most part, and then Darkseid is kind of just looming in the background, and we get flashbacks with him, which is really good. We get a really extended flashback scene on when Darkseid is on Earth fighting with the mother boxes, and there's Atlanteans and Amazonians and humans and Green Lanterns, and they're all fighting against this huge battle. It looks really cool. It was a fascinating, interesting thing to watch, and like I said, it provided that very important context and helped us understand what was going on. It almost had a similar feel to the opening of The Lord of the Rings, when Galadriel is narrating all of this backstory and telling us what happened with the ring and the War of the Ring and Gollum finding it, and giving us all of the necessary context that we need as an audience to move forward in the story and understand really what's happening. And that's what they did here. It happens kind of in the middle of the movie instead of at the beginning, but that's totally fine. It gives it to us when we need it, and then we understand who Darkseid is, and we're going to move forward from there. And actually, because this Darkseid flashback stuff was so good, I thought that he was going to be more of a player in this movie, and that we were going to get a lot more information from him and really see him fight a little bit more, and we didn't really see him fight at all other than this flashback. So it was definitely some kind of setup for him to be a greater villain, maybe in Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2, which we are not going to get, by the way. There's not going to be a sequel to this movie unless the fans bully the studio some more and get them to make it. And I'm going to talk about Restore the Snyderverse at the very end. Actually, I'm going to talk about it now that I've brought it up. Let's just talk about it. So before, there was the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut, and that's what led to getting this, and now that the fans have Zack Snyder's Justice League, it is not enough. Now they need #restore the Snyderverse, which is make Justice League 2 and 3 and re-edit Suicide Squad to be what it was supposed to be. And I actually wouldn't mind seeing the original cut of what Suicide Squad was supposed to be before the studio chopped it up and turned it into this schlocky, fun time Guardians of the Galaxy mimic. I'm very interested to see what the movie was supposed to be before that. And David Ayer has come out and said it's not going to happen, but his original version was a lot more interesting, and I believe that because the early trailers for Suicide Squad had me in. I was so excited, and it's actually one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I think it's no secret that I really hate Suicide Squad, and I just don't like that movie at all. So now that they're going with this whole restore the Snyderverse thing and trying to get things up and off the ground, but Warner Brothers has come out and said, hey, we're not going to be doing this, but, you know, who knows, right? Marvel also said at one point that Black Widow wasn't going to go onto Disney Plus, and it's coming onto Disney Plus, I think, in July. So things can change, and things can get moved around, and things can get shoveled, and nothing is for sure until you actually see the movie for yourself. So the Restore the Snyderverse, I'm not particularly on board, but I also wasn't on board with Release the Snyder Cut. But here I am talking about it, so they got me to watch it. What was I talking about before I got distracted by that? I was talking about Darkseid and his flashback scene. Yeah, it was really important and added important context. There's another really important scene that does the exact same thing, and it's when Wonder Woman goes to there's this temple, I think it's in Athens or Greece somewhere. The Amazonians had shot a magic arrow all the way to this temple type place, and it set the building on fire, and Wonder Woman goes to investigate, and she goes underneath that building, and there are wall paintings and all these different things that she uses to discover what's going on, and there's context on the mother boxes and what those are, and Darkseid and who he is, and just kind of helps us put all of these pieces together, because a lot of people watching this movie are not comic book fans, and they're not going to know all of the little things just from decades of reading comics, right? So having this stuff is really important to the casual fan and giving them that necessary context. I was just talking to my wife while I was making the notes for this podcast, and I was saying, hey, what about this movie really helped you? Like, what did Zack Snyder's Justice League do right? And the first thing she said was, it explained things really, really well. So she was not as confused as with watching the 2017 version and understood everything that was going on because there was all that additional context that we just didn't have. And then the last positive thing that I have to say about the additions, I really like how the Flash is treated in this movie as opposed to the Joss Whedon version, which is now being called Justice League, which I think is a really fun name, and I like when people give fun little nicknames to movies and things like that. So Justice League really mistreated the Flash, and he was goofy, and he was just, he didn't fit. He didn't fit with everything else. And in this movie, he did fit. And his journey that he goes on works really, really well. One thing that I miss from the 2017 one, which also my wife pointed out is a really good point, is that in the 2017 version, the Flash is saying, like, I don't know how to save people. All I do is, like, push them out of the way, and then I run. And Batman says to him, he's like, you got just focus, just save one life. That's your goal. Just save one life. And when you've done that, just save another life. Just work on that goal. And I think that was a really good character building moment for the Flash. But actually, Zack Snyder's Justice League features 0 Joss Whedon reshoots. It has nothing that he went back and reshot and rewrote. It has none of that stuff. So anything that I liked from the 2017 Justice League, which is not much, by the way, I liked that stuff with the Flash, and then I really liked the opening scene with hunting down the Parademon. None of that is in this movie. There's a lot of missing pieces. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of new pieces that have been added to this movie. Did I mention that it was 4 hours? Zack Snyder's Justice League is 4 hours long. I think I should mention that at one point. It is in my notes. It's 4 hours long, and you could only watch it on HBO Max or if you live in Canada, which I do, it was on Crave if you have the HBO edition to Crave. So that's how I watched it. I was hoping that there was going to be like an iTunes rent version somewhere that we would be able to do it like that, but watching on Crave was just fine. I wish that I could have watched it, in a theater. I feel like this movie would have been really impressive in a theater, most specifically on an IMAX screen, because this whole thing is in a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it kind of looks like a square. Now, my TV is not in the shape of a square, so when I watch something in 4:3, I got big black marks on the sides. That is a lot of unused space on my screen that I could use for watching movies, right? And it's not quite the same as when I watch something that's in 2.35:1, which is a landscape aspect ratio, and it is narrower than my screen. Most TV screens are 16:9. So when you watch something in 2.3:5, you get little black bars across the top and across the bottom, but it's not as much of a distraction for me as when I'm watching something that's 4:3, because it's a lot more of my screen that I'm not using. But IMAX screens are in that shape. They are at a 4:3 aspect ratio, so you can go to an IMAX theater and you can watch it and it would fill up the entire screen, and I think it would just look fantastic for the most part. There's some visual effects stuff I'm going to talk about later, but I think this movie would have really worked well on an IMAX screen, would have packed a harder punch. Maybe I would have been more into it as opposed to watching it in my bedroom, because that's where I watched it, and that's fine, I guess, but like, it is what it is. It was on TV, and that's how I watched it. I would have much rather seen something like this in a theater, but it is what it is. I'm going to get myself back on track here. We're going to talk about the new additions. I'm going to talk about the things that I did not like. First off, because I was just talking about The Flash, I'm going to talk about The Flash immediately again, and there is a scene when The Flash uses his powers to save a woman from traffic, and it is awful. It's unnecessary, it's goofy, and like, The Flash is watching this girl fly out of a car after it got hit by another car, and there's a hot dog stand that got hit, and he's like plucking hot dogs out of the air when he could be saving this woman and maybe trying to reduce collateral damage, or, really anything else other than pulling hot dogs out of the air. And it didn't work for me. I didn't think it was very good. I thought it was very silly, and I didn't like it. And so that was a new addition. Mara, who is in Aquaman, she's in this movie in some new scenes, and she's doing some kind of British accent, which, if you've seen Aquaman, you know she does not have any kind of accent. She's speaking with her American accent, and if you watched her in the 2017 version, she was also using her American accent. So, watching her in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and she starts doing this funny British voice, really threw me off, and I did not like it. I didn't think it was good. I felt it was a poorly done accent, so that's something that I really didn't like. But there was some good stuff with The Flash, and Willem Dafoe makes an appearance in this version, and it's good stuff. We get some really famous people who show up for a small amount of time in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Willem Dafoe is one of them. J.K. Simmons is another as Commissioner Gordon, and even Jeremy Irons as Alfred doesn't get a lot of screen time in this movie, but when he shows up, it's usually pretty good. I like him a lot. But getting back to additions that I don't really like, Steppenwolf's character is expanded on in this movie, and he's really just a sad boy, and he's like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home to Darkseid. And the entire movie, he is trying to take over Earth so that he can give it to Darkseid, and he has his big puppy dog eyes, and I just I didn't buy any of it. I think they were trying to go and make him a little bit sympathetic, and it just did not work for me. To draw a comparison to the Marvel movies, Thanos is a character who I can really relate to, and I really understand, and they really dove into him as a character. And Steppenwolf, I feel, he didn't quite get the screen time needed for me to care about him. Also, he looks ridiculous, and he looks super fake, and the visual effects for him are just not that good. So that's that is what it is. However, his spiky metal suit looks kind of cool, and he has some fun action scenes, and he's a lot tougher in this one. Like, he's killing people left and right, and his action sequences are a lot more brutal, and I liked that a lot more in this one. More things that I did not like. There's a scene where Aquaman is going back into the water, and he takes his shirt off, and he's going in, and all these Russian ladies just start singing, and then they sing a song in praise of Aquaman for a really long time. And the song was all in Russian, and we didn't get any subtitles. We don't know what that song was, or what it meant, or why it was there, and did not like it. So that's that. I didn't think that worked at all. But the biggest thing here, my number one point, if I didn't like anything, if I had to choose anything to be completely removed from this movie and not have it involved at all, it is this next one that I'm going to talk about here. Now, Zack Snyder's Justice League is divided into 5-ish parts. I can't remember exactly how many, 4 or 5 parts. And then the story is over, and then we get the final part, which is just called the Epilogue. And the Epilogue, I think it had a subtitle to it, but I don't remember. But I would cut out the entirety of the Epilogue. I did not like any of this. I thought it was all bad. Now, let me explain why. First off, when they announced that Zack Snyder's Justice League was going to be made, they said they're just going to take the old footage, they're not shooting anything new, the $70 million is just going to be used to do some visual effects and pay for the re-editing and everything like that, and that's it. However, Zack Snyder decided, I'm going to shoot new stuff anyway, and he shot all of this stuff for the Epilogue and the Nightmare sequence, and put it together and tacked it onto the end of this movie, and it kind of promises a sequel that we know we're not going to get, but it also sets up this like alternate universe timeline type thing that is kind of interesting, but it just had nothing to do with anything, especially because they announced that no sequel is going to come from this. Why would you add this really long, I think it's half an hour, this half-hour long sequence where Batman and the Joker and Mara and a couple other guys are walking around the desert, and Superman has gone evil and he's teamed up with Darkseid, and Batman drops an F-bomb and says he's going to kill the Joker, and it just feels so self-indulgent to me. I didn't like it at all. It didn't fit within anything else. I didn't understand why this needed to be in here, and a lot of fans really like this stuff, and I've seen a lot of people online talking about how much they really, really enjoyed that sequence and how different it was, and I will applaud it that it's different, but it's promising something that's not going to come, and so therefore it's extraneous, and I don't need it. Also, I think it's within the Epilogue, or it's either just before the Epilogue, where we get the Martian Manhunter, and his character is played by the general guy who's in Man of Steel. I didn't write down any actors' names in this movie, so forgive me for that, but this general turns into this alien, and he's the Martian Manhunter, and he is helping somehow. He sometimes turns into Superman's mom, and then he goes and visits Batman, and one thing that I have to say about this is that his visual effects were distractingly bad. Like, it wasn't just, oh, that's bad visual effects. Like, it was so bad that I couldn't focus on what he was saying because I was just in awe of this CGI monstrosity that was before me on my TV screen. I couldn't look away from how awful it looked. And this was a new thing that was shot just for this movie. It wasn't intended to be in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is another thing that bothers me about this, is that fans online are saying, like, oh, this is Zack Snyder's authentic vision, and this is what he wanted to release in 2017, and this is what we should have got. But if this is what he wanted to release, he would have shot a bunch of these scenes in 2016 when this movie was originally filmed. Why did he need to go back and shoot more stuff if his original vision would have already been fulfilled with existing footage? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think Zack Snyder likes to do a lot of backpedaling to make the fans happy, and I think that's exactly what this is that he just wants to make fans happy at this point, and then maybe the fans will help him push to get another movie out. I don't know. It's a whole big mess here, but it is what it is, and if we get another one, I'm probably going to watch it so that I can talk about it. But I don't want another one. I don't need another one. I just want Warner Brothers to get their act together and make a cinematic universe that's coherent and makes sense. Or do the exact opposite and just do a bunch of Elseworld stuff, you know? Like Joker was its own thing. I didn't like Joker, but at least it was trying for something different. The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, I'm really looking forward to. I hope it's really good. So that's going to be kind of its own thing. Why not just do a bunch of stuff just on its own, compartmentalized, instead of, throwing people for a loop by doing all these different things and being so inconsistent. And that's the biggest issue that I have with these movies, is that they're so inconsistent with each other, and a lot of people will rag on Marvel. They all look the same and they all feel the same. Well, that's because they take place in the same world, and it's consistent. And there are some things about Marvel that I don't like and that I changed. I don't like everything that's over there, but at least they're consistent and they stick to their plan. In all of Marvel's 20-some movies that they've released, only one have they announced that they did not release, and that was the Inhumans. There was supposed to be an Inhumans movie, but the TV show was really, really bad, so they canceled the movie. Just one out of over 20 movies. As opposed, on the other hand, at Warner Brothers, I don't know the exact numbers, but we've had like 5 or 6 movies, and like 4 or 5 have been canceled. We're finally getting Black Adam. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago where they announced The Rock is going to play Black Adam, and now they're finally making it. It's absurd. It's crazy. They need some real leadership over there, and I don't know. Hopefully they get their act together. I think that's going to be pretty much it for this review. So overall, I did think Zack Snyder's Justice League was an improvement over the 2017 version, Justice League, if you will. I would say that I liked this movie, but I did not love this movie, and I will probably never watch it again. It's 4 hours long. I feel like this movie could have been a lot stronger if it was cut down to 3. I think this could have been a really solid 3-hour movie, but it feels like a bloated 4-hour movie. So I'm going to say that Zack Snyder's Justice League is just good. If you're interested in these movies and the DCEU, I would recommend checking it out, and you might like it. Or if you've already seen it, you might already have that opinion for yourself. So if you've seen Zack Snyder's Justice League, I would like to know what your thoughts on the movie are. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can do that on social media. I'm on Twitter at PottleNathan, and I'm on Instagram at MoviesAreAwesomePodcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and as I wrap things up here, I'm going to recommend that you subscribe to the show if you like it, or recommend it to a friend. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I enjoyed sitting down and talking about this movie. Next week, we're going to be talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm looking forward to talking about that one, so stay tuned for that. And as always, if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.